All right, hello class. Welcome to a cold, dreary start of week 3. I'm very happy that you guys seem to have started to grasp not only the content that we're working with, but also kind of starting to manage the online platform. So for this week, what I want to do is instead of spending so much time delving into what this course is about and things like that, I really want to spend a lot of time talking about the actual specifics of the project that you're working on. And so what you'll see is we're going to look at a outline that I'll post for you guys to use to help you start to write, and so that you can kind of get a sense of what this weird kind of essay, kind of bulleted list thing is that you're writing. So hopefully that by the end of this video you'll have a good understanding of everything that I'm expecting and what you're supposed to do. The other thing that I'll be doing is going over peer review for this. As you know, I've placed you all into a peer review group, and so I'll go over how to submit, how to comment, things like that. First things first, I had an email from one of you stating that there was an old edition of the syllabus floating around our Canvas site. I've since deleted that and re-uploaded the correct version. Now, the correct version is the one that I sent out in the first email to you guys, or the first announcement. So if you're working off that one, you're in good shape. But just make sure, just double check that it says fall 2018 at the top, that you didn't accidentally stumble onto the old one that was kind of hidden in the files somewhere. But that shouldn't be a problem now. If you have been following the weekly modules, then you're already in good shape in that regard. So don't worry about that. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take a look at week 3. We'll kind of get a grasp of what we're doing for this week. And then, like I said, I'll spend the majority of my time talking about Project 1 and doing those kind of things. Let's go down here. Week 3. Okay, so by now this should look like standard affair to you guys. Again, we've got some reading, chapter 6 out of the guide over here. And then you are supposed to choose one of these. Now, these are all in our files section, so if you look for these readings, you will find them here. So just choose one of those and just kind of skim through it, get a good grasp of it. Again, all we're looking for is for you to start to kind of understand the theories behind the concepts that we're working with in terms of genre, discourse, community, and stuff like that. And these readings will really help you do that. Especially, where is it? Well, I wouldn't say especially, because all of these do a good job of doing that. This one's a really interesting one as well. But for sure, look at chapter 6, because that will help you start to improve your skills for doing research, which is going to be something that's very important for you throughout this semester and throughout college in general. So, okay, so on deck for this week, you've got to watch the video, obviously read chapter 6, take a look at one of these. And now down here is what I really want to draw your attention to. Friday of this week, you have your first rough draft due. Okay, you will have a rough draft due for all of your major assignments, and we are going to as effectively as possible try to implement peer review into an online course. Now, I've done this in all of my online courses. I've taught like 8 of these things so far, and it's hit or miss. Really, it depends on what you get out of it, what you put into it. And so for this year, what I've tried to do is I'm trying to give you kind of a scaffold for how to respond to peer essays, so that you're not just getting the one sentence that looks great, right? That's not helpful. And so what I'm going to show you here in a minute is how I've tried to implement some sort of scaffold, some sort of kind of guiding hand into peer review, so that when you do get some feedback, it actually is useful and something that can help you improve the essay, okay? And then by Sunday of this week, I'll expect you to have commented on the rest of your group's drafts. So you should only have 2 or 3 essays to read, because I've kept all groups capped at a maximum of 4 people, so it's not going to get overwhelmed or anything. All right, so what I want to do, though, is I want to spend some time talking about Project 1. Now, as you know, and let's pull up the assignment description. Actually, we can just go here, can't we? Maybe. Project 1, okay. So as you know, I'm sure after reading this for now 2 weeks, there is a lot here. There's a lot of content being thrown at you right now, and it's probably hard to understand what the hell it is you're actually supposed to do. I get that. So this video is going to be devoted to helping you figure that out. Now, the assignment prompt says that you're identifying a disciplinary or professional discourse community. That's what blog 1 was supposed to get you started out. Now, I made a few comments for some of you that said, hey, you're kind of steering away from the proper community. Focus on the one that you want to do professionally. And so I want to stress that you can't research, say, your high school football team. it won't work, because what you need is an established field with established forms of communication like conferences, publications, stuff like that, because you're going to need to pull from all of those for our projects. So make sure you're focusing on the professional field that you want to go into. And you're going to try to figure out how that field matches up with Swales' six characteristics. So intercommunication, genre, stuff like that. So what I want you to do is go back to that reading that you did, the Swales, like the Wikipedia article, look at the 6 bullet points and figure out, okay, how does my group match up with number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. Then what you'll do is you'll spend some time talking about some of the specifics of how your group matches that definition. Okay. And so instead of going over the assignment prompt, because you can read, and I'm sure it's still confusing, what I've done is I've created an outline for what the essay will look like. And so I'll pull that up right now. Give me one second. Okay, I'm back. Okay, here we go. So this is the outline that I will upload to week 3. And so by the time you watch this video, there will be a link at the bottom that will say Project 1 outline. So let's take a look at this, because this is essentially the structure of what your essay will be. And I've fleshed out a few parts to help you work through the various components. Now, what you'll see is I've gone through and kind of done a bulleted list of the major components of the essay, and it's going to be basically up to you to fill in the blanks. So number 1, and let's pull up just so we have it. So you'll see I'm following these, so my essay reflects these. So number 1 is we have Swales' 6 characteristics. So you'll see here I've identified the community that I'm going to do. So for example, I would do English Lit Scholars, because that's what my professional community is. And then down here I would list the 6 major characteristics. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, a definition of discourse community in terms of its common public goals. So essentially I'm defining my community as a discourse community, in which I would do right here, scholars of literature represent a discourse community because, and I would talk about how my community meets these 6 characteristics. Okay, so fill in the blank there. Number 3, at least 3 major communicative practices used by members of the discourse community to accomplish the above goals. And so again, if I've listed out some of the goals are expand knowledge, create new research, teaching, whatever, what are 3 major practices that my group uses to do those? One of which is an article. And so I would say here are the 3 major ones. We use academic articles, we use conferences, and we use email listservs. Now you'll see here I'm going to get specific in a moment, so don't worry about that yet. Okay, so now we move down to the next bullet point, a list of prominent participatory mechanisms or venues. So basically, what are some specific places that people in your community share information? Okay, and so what I've done for mine is I've listed a journal that we use, a conference that we go to, another conference, and an online group. So I have kind of a nice variety, right? There could be websites, there could be magazines, there could be, whatever it is. Your group might be totally different, right? You might have, like, for example, like a yearly retreat that members go to that they kind of talk or whatever. So what are the major mechanisms or places that people in your group use to exchange information? Okay, and let's pop down here. Description of significant mechanisms of intercommunication or genres. Okay, so again, I want to get through the language here. So what I want you to do for this is you are picking a couple, like 2 or 3 major genres that your community uses to exchange information, okay, to achieve their goals. Now, when we're talking about genre like this, an article is a good example because the article is a genre of its own, right? It's this self-contained thing that has rules, right? You can't just draw a picture in crayon and call it an article. There are specific rules that you have to follow, and those rules will be different depending on what community. So for example, as a quick example, in my field, we use MLA citation. That's what we do for the most part, or maybe Chicago, whatever. In the sciences, we're going to be using APA. Now, there are reasons that we do that. You would not see MLA in a science journal typically. And so what I want you to do is to think about what are a couple of genres that your community uses, right? And so to go back to the medical descriptions I was talking about, I think, last week, if you're in the medical field, like the patient history form is a genre that allows your community to achieve its goals. Because what it does is it facilitates a discussion between the doctor and the patient, right? And it does that in a very specific way. It has specific questions that get at what the doctor needs. And it helps the doctor really quickly and effectively analyze what it is that he or she needs to do for this patient or why this patient might be there. So again, the patient history form is a genre that's used in order to facilitate the conversation and to help everyone involved meet their goals, right? And so that would be an example. In terms of our class, the grade book is a good example of a genre we use in education, right? I need to communicate to you my evaluation of your work. So instead of having a long drawn out conversation, I can just say A, B, C, D, whatever it is. And what that does is that communicates a lot, right? So again, a genre is a tool that we use to communicate information quickly and effectively. Okay, so let's look at how I've done this for my community. So for example, for this part, you will have to identify a specific example of that genre. So here's what I've done. Number one, the academic journal. The academic journal is a genre that we use. Here's one specific example. This is an article that I'm reading in this genre, okay? Or I'm sorry, in this journal. So I've given a specific example of the genre. And now what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll quickly analyze how this particular example works. Like how is this genre functioning? And so I've given you a set of questions to follow that will help you do that as well. So for example, describe what it looks like. So what does it look like on the page? How is it laid out? What are the most prominent features? Is there a big flashy title? Is the journal logo really depicted really obviously? Or what does it look like? How would you describe the language? Is it very community specific? Is there a lot of jargon in there? What topic are they talking about? How is research used? Do we see extensive research and footnoting, stuff like that? Are there any visual aids like charts, graphs, pictures? What kind of citation style do you think they're using? APA, MLA, and describe the sentence structure. Long, complex sentences, short, very succinct sentences, stuff like that. And so use these questions as a way to start to describe what you see when you look at this genre. And that is how we will analyze it to start. Okay. So just to reiterate, we're right here. A description of significant genres used by members with specific examples. That's what I've done. Here is a genre. Here is a specific example. Here's how that example works. And so I do that for 2 or 3, whatever it is. The idea is that you can just get an understanding of how these things are working and how they're fitting together. By the time you're done with this, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to have a conversation about how the genres your community uses helps members achieve the goals of that community. Okay, moving on. Description of contemporary topics. And so you'll come across these topics as you are trying to find your specific example of an academic article, for example. Just by reading the titles, you'll get to understand what are some major topics. So I want you to just kind of list them. So you'll see here's some of the major topics in my field. And then just throw in any keywords that seem to pop up over and over again. So for example, if I'm down here in post-humanism, one of the keywords we talk about is Anthropocene. We're talking about different geologic time scales. That'd be something I'd throw in there. So what are some keywords, topics for your field? Next up, where are we? There we are. And then just 2 or 3 research questions you have. What are you curious about? So now that you've learned all of this stuff, now that you've learned about what are the major places people exchange information, what are some of the topics they're discussing, what are you curious about? What are some questions that you have? Okay, and so that's what it'll look like. And this is what your essay will look like. It will be this kind of weird bulleted list, kind of Frankenstein essay format. So it's okay to have these kind of bullets. It's okay to have it kind of listed out in this way. When you get down to where you're describing the the specific example of the genre, then I'm going to want to see this put into paragraph form. But everything else will be that kind of bulleted list. All right, guys, so the last thing that I want to take you to is just how to navigate to your peer review group. So what you'll do is you'll come here, you'll go to people, go to peer review groups, you'll find whatever group you're in, you'll click this, go to the group homepage, discussions, and then you'll see your rough draft here. And so you'll follow these rules. I will post another video about peer review later in the week, but for now, I hope this helps, and I will talk to you guys later.